Good afternoon and welcome to State of Affairs. Our guest today is the leader, the Premier of Bermuda, the Honorable David Burt. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for accepting the invite, Premier.
No problem, Trevor. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, it's been a while,
Oh, it hasn't been that long. We talk all the time.
not on camera.
Sometimes we talk on camera.
You've just returned from your trip in Europe. Let's talk about what was the purpose of that trip?
Well, it's important to remember that I wear two hats. I serve as the premier, but I also serve as the minister of finance. It is a role that I enjoy, a role that I love, but this trip overseas was mainly focused on financial issues. We recognize that international business is a very big part of our economy.
Mhm.
And if you look at the record of the Progressive Labor Party in times in government, we have expanded international business employment to the highest level ever. There are more Bermudians working in international business than ever before. The opportunities for young people in international business have been expanding, and it's important that we continue our advocacy in both the European Union and European capitals to make sure they understand what Bermuda is doing and what Bermuda represents, because they always attack us because they are jealous of our success. So over there, I was engaging in European capitals, mainly in Brussels with the European Union, meeting with European leaders. And one of the things that is important to recognize is that because I have been in this role for so long, I'm not meeting these people for the first time. These are engagements, relationships of which we've had. So I can build on those relationships, but also make new ones. We have a wonderful person leading up our Brussels office, which is Mr. Leah Ahad, a wonderful young person who's broadened our reach or engagement, and we did that. So we also went to Paris to meet with the OECD. As you know, Bermuda is implementing the global minimum tax and will bring into force a corporate income tax in Bermuda for the first time in the country's history on January 1st. This will allow an opportunity for the government to implement this new tax while focus on reducing taxes that are existing that will benefit Bermudians and benefit the cost of living while also keeping the country competitive. At the same time, I had the opportunity while I was in Paris. It was just coincidental because in Paris, the trip was scheduled before.
Mhm.
Of course, there was these particular dates, but it just so happened that the night that I was in Paris, because I was only in Paris for about 24 hours, that I was able to attend the closing ceremony of the Paralympics. And so that was good. Our Paralympians put up a good showing. We just narrowly missed medals, but it was a pleasure to certainly be there to represent the country. And then we went to Ireland to meet with the government officials in Ireland to discuss what Bermuda is doing. We know that we have a lot of insurance companies that are both in Bermuda and in Ireland, and it's important to deepen those relationships because deepening those relationships only benefits Bermuda, benefits jobs and expansion, and it is vital that Bermuda makes its friends before it needs them.
You spoke of the corporate the implementation of the corporate income tax.
Mhm.
How much would that generate for Bermuda?
Well, the corporate income tax is going to be variable, and it's important that we recognize with income taxes, they go up and they go down. But the important basis of an income tax, and this harkens back to a conversation discussion of which I have been engaged in since the time that I've entered frontline politics. I started in 2010 as junior minister of finance, speaking around these particular issues. And the fundamental premise of taxation in Bermuda, the reason why we have high cost of living is that all of the taxes that are currently leveled in Bermuda are inflationary. They increase costs. And the corporate income tax will allow us to gain additional revenue. The estimates that the Ministry of Finance is using, which I published in the budget statement this past year, on average of $750 million a year. And if you look at the quantum of $750 million a year over time, that means that we could reduce or eliminate customs duty. We can reduce or eliminate employer payroll taxes. We can reduce other fees and other charges while also making critical investments, providing relief for healthcare costs, making sure that we secure our pensions for the future. So it is an important development, and it is important for us to remember that it is global. So we've heard some commentary that people will say about, oh, well, there are some countries that aren't implementing it. Bermuda is going to lose business to other jurisdictions. We've actually seen the opposite. Last week in the Ministry of Finance, after my return from the European Union, we had a delegation, a company that is a listed company on the New York Stock Exchange that is looking to move entities from another jurisdiction to Bermuda for the precise purpose of paying corporate income tax in Bermuda. There are others that are looking to do that because we consulted with industry. We work together as we have always done in a cooperative and collaborative fashion to make sure that we meet the international requirements, and that will only benefit Bermudians in the form of additional jobs, additional revenue to the government that the government has pledged to use to reduce the cost of living. There are some who say we should take a different approach. There are some who say that we should focus immediately on debt reduction and don't worry about trying to reduce those other taxes, et cetera, all the rest. But those are people who will be speaking from a position that they are comfortable. We recognize that we must address matters related to the cost of living. We've done many particular actions, the government has, but this corporate income tax will allow us over the next few years to make significant reductions in existing taxes, which will only benefit Bermudians and, most importantly, keep Bermuda competitive. Because to have businesses in the country, you need to make sure that you have a competitive economy, and that will benefit local business, residents, and also international business.
Last week, you announced a $25 million social investment package to address a number of issues facing the island. Why did it take so long for you to address, to even introduce this package and the need to address the social ills?
Well, so I would not agree that it has taken the government this long to realize that. And that's not the case because we have made significant additional investment in social services since 2017. But I think it's important that we remember the journey that we've been on. When we came into office in 2017, we found a place in a space where childcare was cut by the former government, that Bermuda College was no longer free, that scholarships were reduced, that healthcare funding was cut. And what we did in our first budget is that we started with the reform of our tax system. A lot of people don't remember back to 2018, 6 years ago.
Wow.
But one of the things that we did in our first budget was implement a tax on local dividends because, as I say, the people who own the companies should be paying the same level of taxes as the people who work in companies. So if you are a business just down the street from here and you're a cashier, you are paying payroll tax on every dollar that you earn. Whereas the owners of that establishment were not paying payroll tax on the dividends of which they took out of their own company. We view that as fundamentally unfair, and we fixed that. And that yielded $50 million of investment in the first year of where we put that into healthcare, education, and community services as well. Remember, we introduced matters related to items of looking to tackle the root causes of violence. But when we're talking about this particular plan, what we have found is our management of the economy, our successful implementation of the economic recovery plan, where we've seen our economy recover, and also, key point, the reform of our tax system. Remember, the former government increased payroll taxes to the highest level ever on workers, highest level ever. We have cut it to the lowest level ever, reducing payroll taxes for 86% of workers in this country and every local business, while increasing taxes on those that were earning higher levels. And what does that mean? That has brought in more revenue to the government. And what have we done with that revenue? Last week, we reduced the energy taxes by 60%, which were doubled under the former government. And also, we were able to put forward this additional investment package, primarily focused on social services, not to start to address the social ills, but to put additional investment into addressing the social ills, to expand trauma counseling, to expand rehabilitation programs, to expand mental health treatment and interventions, to expand matters that are dealing with at-risk families, to make sure there's additional services, to hire additional occupational therapists and physical therapists inside of our school systems to work with young people who may be at risk, to break the intergenerational cycle of violence. And so from that, it is not to start. It is that we have come into additional funds and we are going to use those additional funds. There are some people who argue that we should wait until the next budget. Some people say wait until after an election. We don't believe that. Our history has been when we do see that we have the space and capacity to do more, we do not wait. This is not the first year we've done a mid-year review, and it will not be the last. If the conditions change, then we should. And I also made a pledge to the country in July. We know that we're faced with a number of traumatic incidents. And I said that we are going to go take a look back, understand what additional resources could be brought to bear. And we've brought those additional resources. Ministers have worked very hard, and many of them have been speaking about the details of the packages that they are going to and how they're going to use this additional investment. And in the House of Assembly tomorrow, when we debate, we will also be sharing more details with the public.
What might you see as the greatest social challenge, social ill that challenges what Bermuda will face it today?
I think the greatest social challenges that we have on an overall basis is the lack of community and cohesion. I really think that's what it is. And it's really painful for me as someone also in politics, recognizing that so much, and we had discussed this before, so much of public interactions is focused on personalities and not talking about policies. And so what we want to make sure to do is to do whatever we can to make sure that Bermudians succeed. So we have expanded opportunities for young people, but we know that there are young people that are falling through the cracks, not for any fault of their own. And we want to make sure to provide and to support them. So under the Ministry of National Security, there's additional funding for matters related to GED programs. There's additional funding for interventions inside of schools, additional funding for interventions with community clubs, working collaboratively with our partners in those particular spaces to identify those persons at risk and have something. There's a program in there where they're looking to take kids to Africa to expose them to different spaces and different avenues. And so there's many. And so the most important thing to recognize also is that this is not just being done by the government. We work with community partners. There are many community partners in the community that are doing great work, and they need additional resources to help. We do not believe that the government is the answer to everything. We know that the community is the answer to everything, and we want to provide those resources and support for them to help. Because the violence of which we're seeing, and we can get into many discussions on that, because I personally have a feeling that many of this is because of media, social media, algorithms, feeding our children, young people, destructive behaviors and teaching them those type of things. I'm very protective of my children when it comes to the internet and other types of items like that. And I encourage other parents. One of the things we've seen from the Ministry of Youth, Social Development, and Seniors on matters relating to parenting, making sure people understand the dangers of exposure to the internet and making sure that there are the requisite protections in place. So from that aspect, we need to return to a sense of community, a sense of belonging, and we need to make sure that we empower the community helping agencies who are doing great work with additional resources so that they can do more.
You've included infrastructure in the spending plan last week. You think you're a few years too late for infrastructure?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, and I want to get back to it. This is additional. Let's remember where we were. When we came into office, infrastructure spending was at $50 million a year. We had to make sure, and it's a lot of people also forget, Trevor. We came into office in 2017. People expected us to increase the debt ceiling in 2018. We did not increase the debt ceiling in 2018.
You had
The only reason that we had to increase the debt ceiling the first time was due to Morgan's Point. And then, which has cost the taxpayers in excess of $200 million. So let's remember that. After that particular perspective, what did we get faced with? A once-in-a-century pandemic, which wreaked havoc on our economy, havoc on our tourism sector, and havoc on our psyche, and in some ways, havoc on our cohesion. And so from that aspect, the government needed to rebuild. We said that we were going to rebuild Bermudians with Bermudians at heart. And so we have continued to, as we've come closer and closer to a balanced budget, increase investments in capital spending. I said a few years ago that the government could have easily balanced the budget 3 years ago. But a balanced budget, if you don't have a balanced society, is not worth anything. And so we increase capital spending, and we have increased capital spending year after year after year with record investments in affordable housing, purchasing of new asphalt plant, making sure that we're purchasing new equipment, investing in facilities where our students are, our new schools, and rebuilding schools and new facilities there, insofar as constructing health care facilities. Those are the types of things which we're doing. This package provides a boost because if we are focused on the social ills and the challenges as well, there are monies in there for a starting of a senior daycare facility to address those parents who find themselves in the sandwich generation, who are taking care of their children while also taking care of their aging parents, which puts a lot of stress on middle class families. And so we know to address that when we're talking about the youth. Community centers. This is important. We've worked to upgrade these community centers, but the minister responsible for youth has asked for more, and we are giving more there. But when we talk about in communities, when we're talking about playgrounds, I can tell one story. Trevor, you remember when we were young, right? And we used to go to Ports Island and Whites Island back then. Do you know that some of those services have been reduced? And the reason why is because the docks are in need of repair. So we're making sure that resources are put there so our young people have more activities. And so from that perspective, and it's also in safety inside of our communities, whether it's street lighting, whether it's other things from that aspect. And so this is a total and broad package. Ministers were asked to go look at the things that would have the most immediate community impact that we could deploy inside of a budget year, because oftentimes it takes planning, and to look how we could do that. And so that's the reason why infrastructure is there.
You've said a lot, and there's a lot I can touch on, but you talked about the plant,
Mhm.
the asphalt plant.
Mhm.
When will that be up and running and ready? Because our roads are
So,
worse than some of the islands in the Caribbean.
well, I'm not going to go that far. I would say, here's what I would say though, Trevor. I would say that the roadworks continue. And we know that,
Patchwork. That's patch.
well, I'm not going to say it.
Our roads are terrible.
Here's the thing, Trevor. I drive on the roads. I know they're terrible. The minister drives the roads. He knows they're terrible. The question that I have to always remind people is, how do we get here and how are we going to get out of it? We got here from years and years of lacks of capital investment. That is a fact. And I spoke to it in our budget statement. Global averages say that countries should invest up to 2% of their GDP in infrastructure. We haven't been at 2% GDP since 2005 and 6. That is the reality. And so now you saw this year, we had the largest capital investment that we've had in the country for 15 years. But when we're talking about the asphalt plant, I did ask the colonel the other day, the existing asphalt plant is up and running. It is producing. The challenge that we had is it kept on breaking down. There are many roads that are being paved. They've gone from one space. They're moving to another. The colonel is going to speak to the additional works that people can be planned. We're ordering additional equipment, which will be able to enhance and speed the pace to deal with the particular challenges in areas. But the infrastructure package that is included in there also has $1 million to address some private roads in consultation with the community, because the government is responsible for public roads, not private roads. But if persons do raise money for private roads, the government does help and assist to make sure those private spaces can be done as well.
The plan talked about substance abuse and mental health programs, but there is talk that the possibility of MWI closing. Who will administrate this program?
So one of the things, as I said, is it's not just about what the government is doing. It is about what the community can do. And so from the addiction services expansion, I think the minister had mentioned that there are grants to focus counseling services, an increase in boosts, and also a grant to Pathways Bermuda, who are looking to bring in an additional clinical person to expand the programs which they offer as well. When speaking about matters related to mental health, they are broad. So there's many community agencies that are doing things insofar as mental health that are focused towards young people. There's work that the Ministry of Health is doing, and there's also items and grants towards MWI under the Bermuda Hospitals Board. When you're speaking about MWI closing, I'm not sure that it is a question of the services that MWI offers. I think it is a question of what do we do with the plant, and whether or not to reduce stigma, you should have all services that are on one particular plant and one particular aspect. So I think it's from that perspective, because when there are two separate items, that does contribute to the stigma. And I think that's the conversation the Minister of Health is having around there. But the programs will certainly be administered through the BHB, through community partners, and also through the Ministry of Health, and in consultation with our schools as well when tackling matters related to young mental health. We touched earlier on social media and different things. We know that social media has contributed to significant deterioration of mental health, especially in adolescent females. And it is important that we put resources in to address. The minister's hosting something where counselors from schools are coming in so they can understand the warning signs. And we need to deal with these matters, because if we don't deal with these matters, they will manifest themselves 10 and 20 years into the future.
Have a shortage of healthcare workers worldwide.
Absolutely.
How do you look to, especially for the health clinic, how do you look to rectify that issue?
Well, it's a hard one, Trevor, and you understand that particular issue of which we are facing. So, a couple of ways that we're looking at doing it. First of all, the government has to be competitive. So, in lots of cases, we might have to increase salaries in these particular cases to attract these persons, because it's important to have our health clinic staffed, and it has been something that our MPs have come to us about because they've heard on the doorstep. And so it is something that we are certainly committed to. So this additional funding will allow for hiring of qualified locals, because there are some qualified locals that are looking and to make sure that we're restoring funding to hire some additional posts, while also making sure that we can boost salaries in particular areas. I'll be speaking on it in Parliament tomorrow about the Public Service Strategic Plan. But we've been going through a strategic review, which I did address in the budget statement, looking at hard to fill roles inside of government. The pay scales that are inside of the government right now, Trevor, the basis of it come from the 1970s, before I was alive. And so from that particular perspective, we have engaged in a broad process on reforming how we think about public sector salaries to make sure that they can be competitive in the areas which there is strong competition with the private sector, such as matters related to healthcare, such as matters related to engineering, such as matters related to compliance, to make sure that we can retain persons so we can provide those services, because public health services and clinics are vital services for persons inside of our community to avail themselves. Right now, the unfortunate circumstance is everyone has to come to Hamilton. We are making sure that we're getting them so they can be available in St. George's. And in Somerset, we know that work is currently happening. So if you go up there, there is construction happening to reopen the Western Healthcare Clinic. And we want to make sure that we're able to staff those properly. And that means we have to put the resources in place for the hiring proactively. And in any cases, if we need to boost salaries, to make sure we attract people and retain them, not only from overseas, but also qualified Bermudians who may be in the private sector.
Good stuff. Rehabilitation of inmates is also mentioned. Does that mean hiring of additional staff? And also, I didn't hear anything about the plant, the facility at Westgate. When would funds be available to fix up
So,
the Westgate facility?
So the main budget, Trevor, actually does have funding for the Westgate facility. So the one that was, and I don't remember the figures off the top of my head, but I know that there is additional investment that has been put in place for matters related to infrastructure at the Westgate correctional facility. But I'm happy that you asked about the rehabilitation program. So it does have a number of various items. Those matters previously fell under the Minister of National Security. They've now been transferred to the Attorney General and Minister for Justice. But under those particular programs, there is provision for the hiring of additional staff to administer rehabilitation programs. In addition to that, there is the money that is there to purchase new computers for the facility to administer programs. And there's a number of various programs that are inside of the package, which I think were outlined by the minister. But if not, will be outlined in Parliament tomorrow. These deal with even intimate partner violence and domestic violence matters, insofar as rehabilitation on those added matters. There's computer courses, there's culinary courses, there's work readiness training. And even in Westgate Correctional Facility, I did something the other day that we had Westgate inmates that participated in the FinTech training program as well. So there are programs that are currently happening. And as I said, this is about expanding what is there already to make sure that we can invest more in tackling these issues, which require investment. They don't yield results immediately, but if you don't do it, we know that it results in long-term damage, and that's why it's important. And the reason why we're able to do it is because we have successfully managed to rebuild our economy from a pandemic, reform our tax system where we've reduced tax for workers and increased taxes on those who can afford to pay more, which means that more resources are coming to government, which allows us to reduce taxes, while also making critical social investments.
You spoke about the pandemic. What did it cost Bermuda for?
Oh, wow. I mean, that's a lot, Trevor. I mean, I can talk about what it costs the government, but I mean, the impact on our psyche, I mean, the impact on levels of community. In a lot of places, a lack and breakdown of social cohesion, the attacks that went on different persons and different things. It was a very hard time. I mean, I look back on it and I look back on, the challenges that, we all went through as a community during that particular time. And I think that, lessons are learned. Lessons are learned all the time. But the amount of money that it costs us, if I just look at tourism, I mean, look how many people lost their jobs in tourism. Fairmont, Southampton, perfect example. Other properties that, were forced to close or to shut down, the jobs that were lost from that perspective, et cetera, is significant damage to our economy. But that's not just for Bermuda. That was around the world.
Mm.
Mhm.
I'm glad you mentioned Southampton Princess.
Mhm.
An email came out last week. A
Yes.
notification came out about the Southampton Princess.
Mhm.
The average person on the street is, why now? We've got an election looming. It's this electionary.
Mhm. So can I say something, Trevor?
Speak to the people.
I'm happy to speak to the people. I have been accused of tabling election budgets. Every year I table a budget. And what I say, it is not just because it's good for the people and good for the country does not mean that it's election budget. In 2022, I was accused of table election budget. In 2023, I was accused of table election budget. In 2024, I was accused of table election budget. And I'm sure in the future, we'll be accused of the same thing. The fact is that let's go back to the history. And the history is important. Remember, that hotel property was purchased in 2019.
Mm-hmm.
And the intention was for that property to close at the end of 2020 to undergo renovations. We all know what happened in March of 2020.
Yeah.
We know the hotel elected to permanently close down in September, October that year, and the surrounding circumstances. And so the government worked with the developer to try to assist in order to support the reopening of the country's largest hotel. Now, we went through a number of different processes, et cetera, and we came to a deal with the developers that was approved by the cabinet in September of 2022. That was our deal with the developers, but it's important to remember this is a private sector transaction. And so it was up to the developers to do their work to raise their funding inside of the constraints that we gave them in order to make the deal a reality. Because the one thing that we insisted on was that the deal would be fully funded. Now, here's the thing. If I was electioneering, I would do what the OBA did on Morgan's Point, where the deal wasn't fully funded. They extended a guarantee because election was looming, rushed to go ahead and do construction, filmed election ads up there while the project was already in default of its obligations to the government of Bermuda. But we insisted that it was fully funded because a fully funded project means that it has more likelihood of being completed. And so I reject anyone who says that because they do not understand the issues. Yes, it took time. Last November, we thought we were there. Equity calls had gone out. People started funding escrow accounts, and one of the main lenders pulled out at the last minute. And then the developers had to start from scratch again and to make sure it's rebuilt. But they have stuck to the wicket. The government has continued to provide the support. We have not increased the guarantee. We have done any of those things. We've held firm to the deal that was made in September 2022. And it is pleasing that now they have fully funded the deal and construction will begin in earnest.
Truthfully.
I don't have any issue with the timing. What, Trevor? Come on now. I wouldn't say anything to the contrary. But I welcome you to speak to developers. You should have the developers here on State of Affairs.
I had to get you first.
No problem. But I'm saying, but it's important to remember this is a private sector transaction. They're the ones who can talk about what they're doing. They're the ones who can speak to the reality of how difficult it has been. Raising money for tourism projects in Bermuda is not easy. But it's important to remember this is the largest single tourism investment in this country's history. So $560 million.
Why is it so difficult for Bermuda to attract new development? You got Morgan's Point just sitting there. There's a beautiful piece of land. A lot can be done.
because you have to make sure you have a fully funded project. And we do have high costs of construction and other things. And so from that perspective, that's why they had to make sure they work with Bermuda Industrial Union to come to a labor agreement so the investors have certainty that their investment will be protected. Because remember, this is international investors. So there's money coming in all from around the world inside of this. So it is not easy. We do in Bermuda have a higher cost structure than you'll see in other places. But let me just say it was something else for you, right? And this is important. And of course, from a hospitality perspective, Bermuda, we have different times. We don't have sun all year round per se, or it's hot weather all year round. So that's the other thing. It's seasonality. And that's why the BTA is focused on promoting the off season rather than promoting the season where we know that we're going to have a lot of tourists. But I think that it's also important to know that this debate over concessions shows how we are so focused on our internal issues that we don't look at the bigger picture. Because some people online will comment and they'll say, well, look at Turks and Caicos. They're building all these hotels. Turks and Caicos gives 25-year concessions with a thought of an eye. Cayman Islands is the same thing. In Bermuda, we're here fighting on whether it should be 10 or 15. That's why sometimes it's difficult. And that's why I always ask persons to focus on the policy issues. Look back on this government's policy issues of which we have implemented. We promise to make the system more fair. We have reduced tax for workers while increase it. We have increased seniors' pensions. We have expanded scholarships. We have put more money into education and healthcare. Those are the things. If you even look at the fact that we've frozen government healthcare premiums for 3 years in a row, saving families $540 a year, frozen gasoline prices since 2022. That's the type of, I guess I'd say, approach that has always been consistent with the Progressive Labor Party because we want to be focused on the needs of working people.
Good stuff. Premier, there is a increasing homeless and unsheltered population in Bermuda. Many of whom suffer from mental health issues. How do we tackle that?
Well, and so thank you for asking the question, because part of what you'll hear the Minister of Youth, Social Development and Seniors, who I think you should really have on your program, because Minister Tanae Herbert is an excellent minister who has done incredible work and is focused on this particular issue. Inside of this, there is significant money and support for matters related to the unsheltered population. And so from that perspective, I think that that is important. And so on that particular angle, we need to make sure that we put more resources there. The government has invested record amounts in affordable housing. There are more affordable housing that's coming online. Colonel is going to be speaking to additional housing measures in the House of Assembly tomorrow. And so from that aspect, but you also spoke about the matters related to mental health. And this package includes not just additional funding for matters related to the unsheltered population and also seniors that are housing insecure, but also to deal with the matters that are related to mental health.
Are you in communication with the powers that be at the BHB, especially for the professionals that are needed for the increase in mental health issues we have in Bermuda? Because I know for a fact there are very few specialized persons on island.
Thank you for asking the question. And that's the reason why we need to make additional investments to expand. So I think the Minister of Health certainly spoke about that at her press conference on Monday. And inside of the particular package, there is increased funding for specific mental health issues dealing with BHB and more broadly. So the answer to your question is yes. But I don't want to say these things take time. I think it's important just that we focus on the core of the why. If you do not make investments now, then problems happen in the future. And as I say, there are others who will take a different approach. They'll say you should wait until, the budget is balanced. You should wait until we have a surplus. You should wait until we pay down debts. You should wait on all the rest. We take a different approach. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. And it is important that you address issues as they are coming to you right now.
I'm sure you know this, Premier. Bermudians are leaving to go to other countries and around the world outside of Bermuda. What is the government doing to encourage them to return or not leave?
So let's look at,
and with the cost of living being so high, that's a challenge for a lot of our people.
There is no question, Trevor. You know my family. You know my background. I'm the first person in my family to go to university. I don't come from a lot, and these families are faced with challenges. You know that we all have challenges inside of our individual families and individual circles. So let me address the issue there. Yes, there are possibly and likely more people leaving Bermuda than had left before. They leave for various different reasons. Some of them leave for financial reasons, some of them leave for educational reasons, some of them leave for safety reasons, some of them leave for opportunity reasons. That is not a new phenomenon, but I think we can all accept that it is something that has increased recently. We are now able to measure that, whereas we were not able to measure that before. And we've put significant work into making sure that we can actually measure what that looks like. And so starting at the next census, we will be accurately able to measure the flows of people who are emigrating and immigrating into the island, because we need a new baseline from a new census. But on the issues that you speak about when it comes to cost of living, how do you address cost of living? You address cost of living by reducing taxes, which this government has done. You address cost of living by making sure you provide support to the vulnerable. And you address cost of living by making sure that you are really, how would I say, intervening in a space where the government needs to intervene. Let's look at what we've done on healthcare. As I said, we've frozen government health insurance premiums for 3 years in a row. That actually costs money from the government. If we did not do that, everyone will be paying $540 more a year for their healthcare premiums, if you follow what I'm saying. And that is something that impacts over time. The way that we reverse this trend is continued investment in housing, work on tackling, which is one of the areas of particular focus for me, is the vacant and derelict housing, stronger laws around making sure that we can deal with them, because there is the need for additional housing in the country. Because if housing is which is driving a lot of expenses, and people are housing insecure, and they can find housing and different educational opportunities in other places, they go there. But I want to make sure you remember, England is not a low tax place, by the way.
I totally
England is not a low tax place. But
Very much
the
a real-
reason why they have free healthcare at the point of care is because they have income tax. And so when we look to the future with a corporate income tax, and if you go back to what I said in the budget, one of the primary focuses will be to take that revenue, invest it into providing and seeding the national health plan so we can get a grip on health insurance costs, which are not only affecting individuals, also affect businesses who have to pay those for their employees, which means that they have to increase costs and prices for consumers. So whether it's customs duty, whether it's those particular matters, it is over the long term. Do I think that things are going to get better tomorrow? No. But any politician that tells you that they can reduce the cost of living tomorrow without changing the tax system is a politician who is selling you a dream. This is something that I've said on numerous occasions, and I'll repeat it. And that is why we are focused on implementing the corporate income tax and reducing the costs in the country.
I'm impressed.
I mean, that's reality, Trevor. I mean, but this is the thing, and that's why I say, Trevor, because it's important that we talk about policy. A lot of times when people are either online or on blogs,
on
stuff,
policy.
no, but when they're online and blogs, they're just hacking accusation, all the rest. Oh, he doesn't care, he doesn't care. I go to the supermarket too. People are surprised when they see me in the shopping center. I say, I have to buy stuff too. And the fact is, I have a family as well and dealing with these particular issues. And when, members of your family may ask, can you help? Constituents who ask, it is hard. It is hard for persons. And so the only way that you can stem that flow is to make sure that, number one, there's opportunity, but number two, the other auxiliary costs that surround us are less. Reducing energy prices, reducing energy taxes, keeping a cap on healthcare expenses. That's what we've done. Making sure.
Being in Belco.
Yes. I mean, Belco, or even the money, the fuel that you pay to put your car in the tank, which a lot of that, Trevor, is taxes. Look at people who buy new cars. Do you follow what I'm saying? Cars expensive. Every piece of auto equipment that is bought in Not cars. Cars are a different matter. But when you go to fix your car, for instance, remember, they're paying customs duty on all the materials which they bring in. They're paying customs duty on their equipment.
Yeah, but the markup prices are ridiculous.
A second. I'm not going to argue on that. But remember, that business also, if they're employing people, right, has to pay health care for their employees, has to pay social insurance for their employees, has to pay pension for their employees as well. So if they have less of those things they have to pay out, if they're paying less money for healthcare, less money for customs duty, then those can lead over the long term to reduction in prices. This is not something that's going to happen overnight. But it is important that we continue the journey, and this government is laser focused on making sure that the revenue from the corporate income tax is used to reduce existing taxes to reduce the cost of living. That's not the approach of the OBA. The OBA says that they should be walled off and it should only be used for infrastructure
It's not the
and debt reduction. Absolutely.
Not the government.
However, as we all know, sometime before February 2026, there will be a choice to be made. And it's important that people understand the different approaches of the people who want to implement policy, because at the very basis, elections are about the people who are going to implement the policies. And we have to focus on the policies that are going to be implemented. And our policy record is one that is focused on investing working people and doing all that we can to make Bermuda more fair.
Last week you spoke of the PLP government yourself, spoke of how has encouraged people to withdraw down from their pension to buy a house. For example, how are people going to rebuild the pension so that we'll still have money to retire with?
So I would not agree with what you just said, Trevor, where you said the Progressive Labor Party encouraged persons. What we believe,
one word, yeah,
okay, that's fine. But what we believe, I'm going to speak to the policy.
particularly on word.
That's what I'm saying. But you said encourage. Encourage is we did not go out and say go do this. Just so we're clear. But you are correct. We have tabled a piece of legislation that will allow persons to withdraw a portion of their private pension balances to buy a first home. Number one, it is voluntary.
What's the age? What's the age you're looking at for this person?
I'm happy to go into the details on that because there's an age thing as well. So 45 and under,
Okay.
you can withdraw up to 30%.
Okay.
45 and older, you can withdraw up to 15%. But let's take, for instance, a young person. And it's important that you remember that there's a number of parts about this, right? Because this is not the first thing of which we've done with home ownership. Remember, we've expanded the first-time homeowners tax suit exemption. Number one, we've introduced the mortgage guarantee program for first-time homeowners, which has reduced down payments from 20% to 10% and reduced interest rates to a starter rate of 5%. So that's the second step of which we've made available for persons to get on the property ladder, which has benefited dozens of young Bermudians being able to buy their first home. And third, we have to recognize that not everyone may have all of the money for the down payment. So let's say you were this person and who had had the opportunity to buy a condo for $600,000 and you needed a down payment of $60,000, but you only had $40,000 saved. Now you have the option, especially if you're married, on taking a small portion of your pension to put towards this. And we also allow family members, parents, to go ahead and to assist others in order to make that purchase. That is beneficial for a family. And here's because I know that people want to criticize this, but let me give you a real example. Remember, I've been doing finance for a while, since 2010. And one of the countries that I look at in regards to how they deal with their pension funds and flexibility on their pension funds is the country of Singapore. Singapore has some of the highest home ownership rates in the world, 90%. And you know what they allow? People to pull from their pension to put down payments on their homes. And so it's not new. People always want to find ways to criticize, but the fact is it's voluntary. People are going to be educated on the pros and cons, just like on the Singapore website. They say, if you do this, it will reduce your retirement balance, but you're able to do it. And people can have and make their own choice. But it is always important to remember that we are committed to building a nation of owners. And the way that you build a nation of owners is you provide help and assistance. I know there was some person, young person who contacted me online, grateful that the government put in this program because it puts him that much closer to owning a piece of the rock. We have young persons in international business who do have pension balances, who are making a lot of money, where they might have some money that are saved and they can just go ahead and take this, go ahead, put it on, and they can get that condo in today. So from that perspective, we think it is sound policy, entirely voluntary, but we believe that it will help more persons become homeowners, and that has been an objective of this government.
It's good stuff. You explained it pretty good. So
Well, but this is, I don't want to take all the credits. I don't want to take all the credit because this is an idea of the junior minister of
sometimes
finance.
that's what's needed for the people.
Well,
A better explanation on
I accept that because what will happen
things that
is,
you're bringing forward.
and I'm happy that you give me the opportunity, because oftentimes what happens is we try to boil these things down into sound bites. It's not like people are going to listen to the House Assembly or listen to certain things, and it is important to explain these type of things. We're not picking policies out of the sky. We are doing policies that have been demonstrated to work in other countries that have had good results, making sure we put the requisite safeguards and protections in place, but to provide people an option in which to do so.
As the finance minister,
Mhm.
have you been able to put a course to the cyber attack?
Absolutely. That was reported in Parliament. That was reported in Parliament.
Yeah.
Yes, it was reported in Parliament. I think the total cost for all of the efforts for recovery and different things, I think it was reported in Parliament, $4.4 million. But in addition to that, there's significant other capital investments of which we're making to strengthen our systems. I mean, to make sure that we have necessary and appropriate cyber insurance as well. So I mean, cyber incidents happen all the time. And they are going to continue to happen. And I would not stand here and say that the government of Bermuda will not suffer from another cyber attack. Cyber attacks happen in the private sector, in the public sector, and government agencies all the time. That is a new
banking too.
Absolutely. That is a new nature and space of international criminal enterprise that the international bodies are looking to deal with. But from our perspective, it was certainly, I don't want to say it was a wake-up call, because we had a steadily increased capital investment. But the parliamentary committee that hopefully the Speaker of the House will appoint soon will be able to look into it. And I think it's important. And one of the things that I want to make sure that as I, move towards the end of my tenure, is to make sure that the parliament becomes more active. One of the things that was in our election manifesto in 2017 was to implement oversight committees. So our backbenchers, yes, so our backbenchers could do more work. I spoke to the Speaker of the House about it the other day. I said, Speaker, we said we've changed the rules. We need to make sure we get these committees in place so that our backbenchers on both sides can be more active, can make sure to provide the oversight, because that's responsibility of Parliament. The responsibility of Parliament is to provide oversight to the executive and to delve into issues. And it can only help for younger or newer or other MPs to be able to speak to technical officers, to be able to understand issues, to be able to question government policy. Because here's the thing, Trevor, our government isn't perfect. No government is perfect. No government in history has ever been perfect. We all have lessons to learn. We all have space to improve, but we've always demonstrated that where we may make a wrong place, we can be quick to adjust. And we've done that, and we'll continue to make sure we do that.
And admit you made a little error.
I've admitted I made a mistake. I've made a mistake many times. People.
They say politicians or leaders never apologize. Never apologize for it. It's just a sign of weakness.
Well, Trevor, here's what I'm going to tell you. I am going to send you a picture of a front page newspaper article that says Premier apologizes for. The fact is, I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong. But a lot of times we want to go on personality issues rather than policy issues. We advance policies because we believe that they are the right policies for the future of this country. When we invest in education, when we invest in, look back at where we came from, Trevor. When I came into office in 2017, our public schools didn't have Wi-Fi. Our kids didn't have computers. That's what we found in 2017. That's just wild. And so Those are the things. And I think that persons in this country sometimes forget what we found when we came into office and the significant investments that we've made under very difficult financial circumstances. Very difficult financial circumstances to make the investments to give our young people a chance to succeed in the future. Look at what we did with Bermuda College. The former government got rid of free Bermuda College. We made sure in our first 100 days that no Bermudian who wanted to go to Bermuda College was denied the opportunity to do so because of finances. And look at what we've seen. We have done that. We've increased scholarships. We've increased investment. We increased money to the BDC, grants for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is vibrant and live in this country. It was funny. And here's the thing. A lot of times you talk about we need to explain issues. Let me tell you something else. A lot of times politicians aren't even paying attention to the issues. I saw something the other day where the One Bermuda Alliance has said that, do you believe that we should eliminate taxes for the first year of businesses so they can get themselves on a strong footing? That was in our 2017 election manifesto and has been the law of the land since 2018. This is the reality, Trevor. So a lot of times people need to focus on the policies, and it's hard. It's a lot. You know what I'm going to do, Trevor? I'm going to share with you a document that lists off all the various changes that the government's made since 2017. It might be helpful because it's a lot. Have we gotten everything right? No. Are some of those things, those lists, we ended up changing because they weren't the correct policy or have the correct outcome? Yes.
But you spoke of Wi-Fi in schools, but that gives the young people access to the internet.
It also gives the access to entertainment. Not entertainment, educational
Sounds like a
activity.
contradiction.
No. Hold a second. Technology, Wi-Fi, internet is essential for education.
Okay.
It is essential. And look at what we've done. Remember, one of the big things that everyone talked about, we need a trade school in Bermuda. We need to bring a trade school back. We have brought it back, Trevor. There is a trade school at the Cedar Bridge Academy. The signature learning programs that started last year have tracks for trades where persons will leave the Cedar Bridge Academy ready to enter with certifications into masonry, into plumbing, to electricity, electrical stuff, all those items, HVAC. That is what we have actually done. We said we were going to do it. Change doesn't happen overnight. I know that everyone wants us to flip the light switch. It's difficult. It's not that easy.
So can students from Berkeley join that program?
I believe they can. I'm not entirely sure. So I don't know, but remember, but that was our vision for Signature School.
Okay.
Our vision for Signature School. So Berkeley has the focus on, I think it's health and financial services. And so from that perspective, we had teachers at Berkeley Institute go away for fintech training, and now they are teaching fintech to students in the Berkeley Institute who are inside of those programs and tracks. And next year, we're going to open a signature school at Sands Secondary School, which will focus on hospitality. And I forget the other focus, but that's the vision. Change doesn't happen overnight. But the policy perspective that the government had was one of implementing these particular changes and pressing forward with those issues. So yes, trade schools do exist in Bermuda. Yes, this government has brought it back. Yes, we have kept our promise, and you should go talk to the students at the Cedar Bridge Academy and the teachers or the principal and ask Mr. Caesar, who is someone who I know from way back, who came back to Bermuda to work in our public education system and is doing a great job.
We only got a few minutes left. Since I've been under the clock. Violent crime and gang violence continues to grow under this current government. What is being done to ensure a better future for our young people and Bermuda on a whole?
So it is very challenging, certainly, to witness the ongoing instances of violence in the country. And my heart goes out to the families who are affected and the trauma of which it causes on family members around. And so it's important that this is looked at from two sides. There is the prevention, detection, and investigation of crime, which is a responsibility of the Bermuda Police Service, and making sure that they have the requisite tools to do so. But it's also important to note, Trevor, that over the last 12 months, the Bermuda Police Service has also recovered 12 firearms. So they are doing their part, and we want to continue to assist them with the tools that will enable them to be effective there. But this is not just about crime, the police, the enforcement perspective. This is about the root causes. We have made investment in the root causes of crime. There are success stories of young men and women who were on a negative path, who were turned into a positive path. There are instances and success stories of families that were challenged and through intervention of government agencies, partnering with community services, have been able to get their life back on track and investing in productive activities. But the challenge is that more needs to be done. And that is the reason why in this social investment package there's more for counseling, more to make sure that we break that intergenerational cycle of violence, more for support for young persons to hire more people to be inside of the schools. One of the things the minister spoke on his press conference on Monday was that they want to bring in someone who is a female to help because we're seeing more females that are getting involved in this type of activity. And so it's around that. We are going to make sure that we put the resources and provide the opportunities for persons to be able to be successful. But we have to remember, and this goes back to a question which you said earlier, and it's something that if you even go back to my speeches in Parliament that I made in the Senate in 2010 and 2011, it revolves around recognizing not only the root causes, but also recognizing that if we cannot address the factors that contribute to this, which in many cases is the one key issue, is the matter related to the cost of living, then these things will continue to, fester because it is difficult when mothers and fathers may have to, work 2 or 3 jobs, children unsupervised, access the internet, etc. But the plea that I would also give to you and to your listening audience, certainly, or the watching audience on Channel 82. Shout out to Miss Sloan Woods for the wonderful job which you're doing here at Channel 82. But the one thing that is important that we said during July, and it continues to reinforce, parents who may feel that their sons or daughters are going off the wrong track, you are not alone. Reach out for help. Reach out for assistance.
Help is available.
There is help that is available, and we are going to expand the resources that are there because we want to break this particular cycle. It is a challenge. There is no question, Trevor, that it is a challenge, but I think that it's something that if we work cleverly and at least accept it and not having parents turn that blind eye, that's a challenge. I have seen it. I have seen parents who will say, no, not me. I have been in those circumstances where you as a citizen have tried to help and the parent has said no. And I will just say to the parents, that short-term feeling of in some way, shape, or form, or guilt that you may have, that you may sometimes have been inadequate or not done the right thing, etc., it's okay. We all make mistakes. It is fine. But that short-term feeling is certainly better than the long-term impacts of the negative aspects that can come towards your child or your family.
Lastly,
Mhm.
you spoke of your last on your last tenure of your reign. I've put a total of 17 months until 2026.
Mhm.
My big question is, when are you going to call a general election? Is it coming soon?
Trevor, here's what I'm going to say. The answer that I always give to that
Media.
question, the media, is that there will be a general election in Bermuda before February 2026. But we're not focused on an election. We are focused on delivering. Look at what we did last week. I don't even need to talk about the social investment package we spoke about before. We said we are going to have an economic recovery plan. We've attracted one of the largest companies in the world, Google, to our shores that is going to provide jobs in construction, opportunity for young people to have jobs in technology. We are focused on continuing to deliver. And so from that particular aspect, I am comfortable whenever the decision is made that we will be able to share with the country not only the progress of which we've made, accept the fact that there is more to be done, but also note that this Progressive Labor Party has always been focused on the working people of Bermuda. And if you compare the records, if you compare the policies, if you compare the proposals, we are confident that the majority of people in this country will agree that the policies, plans, actions, and vision of the Progressive Labor Party is better for them, their families, and their children's future.
Thank you. I'm sure you've been wondering why I have on this pink.
I did think about it when I just
and pink heart-shaped ring. My 6-year-old daughter yesterday, as I was leaving
Mhm.
to go to work, she says, Daddy, I'm got something for you. It's TNN pink and I love you. I need you to wear this.
Uh,
So I'm gonna honor my daughter, Isabella.
mhm.
You have a young one.
Oh, trust me. So
You know what it's like.
as soon as I shared, my wife is away this week, and so I've of course doing double duty as premier and full time dad.
Wow,
But
yeah.
they bring joy. They bring joy to my life, and I mean it reminds you of why you do this, why you do this work, and why it's so important. They are just up the hill at Northlands Primary, and they are having a wonderful time inside of the public school system. And I just want to make sure that we continue to provide those avenues, those investments for them to continue to enrich our lives because they do, every time I talk with my children, I get teared up. So I'm going to stop now.
Yes, sir. So I want to thank those that have sat and watched. Thank you, Premier, for allowing me the time to speak with you. And I hope that in the near future we can do this again. I appreciate you accepting the invite and thank you for showing up.
Absolutely. Well, Trevor, here's what I will say. I will say I think it was a wonderful discussion, and I'm happy to talk about policy at any points in time because it's important for us to understand. If we want to delve deeper into particular issues or want to delve into policy issues I ministers, I'll be happy to make them available.
Policy and a few other extra things. Thank you for viewing. Thanks again for joining us on State of Affairs. Have a good day.